Greetings, gentlemen. So this is going to be a video about Dark Matters 2525. And the question is, if you're the hero and you've won the war, at what point do you become the tyrant? This is Otai, Ogre, and Corgi, and hey, if you're here, like and subscribe. This is just my opinions, and usually I talk about trucking and stuff, but right now we're talking about this, because I like a myriad of things, so I'll talk about whatever I want. Look, I gotta be honest about this. When I was watching the video, the rip on PragerU, and look, I could see where people would rip on PragerU to a degree. Some of their videos are a little corny, but honestly, are they more productive than what I see coming out of the left currently? And the thing of it is that the question of, were you the hero and now you are part of the tyrant? Because it's a real question, because I've noticed this tendency. Whoever wins the war eventually ends up installing themselves as supreme dictators of culture and whatnot. And then we look back and we say, well, Dark Matters was pretty much an atheist channel talking about, Christianity, and it just barely touched on Islam. How convenient, you barely talk about that. Which seems more barbaric in the modern age? Question mark there. But when I look at it, I'm like, if you want to say the atheist argument, I mean, come on, let's be real about this. These battles were fought back in the late 80s, the 90s, and pretty much dead on arrival by the 2000s. People say, well, if they were dead on arrival by the 2000s, why did George Bush get reelected? Well, George Bush got reelected because we had 8 years of Democrats. And we also had 8 years of the Clintons, which basically were talking down to the average American, acting like you're too dumb to know what the fuck you want to do. That's just not popular with anybody. Even Democrats weren't really that thrilled about it. And so, really, when you looked at the people they were running against, George Bush was actually, compared to, fucking Al Gore. I mean, are you kidding me? The guy had as much energy during his time as vice president as a wet dish rag. It wasn't even a surprise that George Bush got elected. Now, a lot of us out there back in the day that were kind of neutral, a lot of us were against, say, the Bush wars. But, and then we thought hope and change after 8 years of the joke that was the Bush era. We thought maybe something would be better. We'd get back to the sane, peaceful style Democrats that we had back in the day, at least what we thought we had, because that's what we were told. Because there were wars in Kosovo and there were issues under Clinton, but that's not what we got with Obama. We got a promise of closing Gitmo, and we didn't get that. We got a promise of ending the war type of mentality, and we didn't get that. In fact, the Hillary/Obama era brought us in the Libyan conflict, that basically bombed Libya into the Stone Age. And for what reason? It's funny how nobody on the left ever bothers to bring that up, and most people on the right don't even bother to think about it. But we bombed that country into the fucking Stone Age, which brought back slavery. So for all the prostrations of how the left is more caring and concerned, this idea that you're saying, well, we need the left wing because Donald Trump is so horribly bad. Show me the last major war that Donald Trump got us into, where he's like, well, we're bombing, a handful of drone strikes that Donald Trump has done, versus the multitude of drone strikes under the Obama era. See, Bush didn't lie about what he was doing in this. He lied about the reason for the war, but he didn't lie about what he was doing. He's like, we're going to bomb the shit out of them. That's what we're going to do. As where Obama acted like he didn't, and the media did cover for him. So, I mean, maybe if you were looking at it from a sane perspective, you were kind of leftist in the early 2000s, because you look at it and you're like, man, yeah, I don't agree with these wars. It's kind of fucking stupid. But then you get no hope, no change, begging for change under Obama. And you're like, well, I guess you've kind of pushed me away too, to where you're in the center. But only to make it worse, that the left wing has basically went from being anti-religious to, hey, my socialism is my new religion. Yeah, my free stuff, me Bernie Sanders. Hey, let's give economic plans that'll never fucking work. Let's not teach people to be self-sufficient, hardworking, and whatnot. Let's make them more dependent off people. That way they're always poor, hungry, and fucking angry. And you want proof of that? Look at the Great Society or whatever shit you want to do. All the work they did back in the 60s to try to, raise up the poor. How has that happened? How has that worked? Is it better in the cities? Is it better in the hood? Is Appalachian trailer parks, do they not exist? I mean, these programs don't work. but getting people educated in just basic stuff, not high-minded college crap that doesn't actually get you a job. And I'm for college if you're getting something real, but you should have to be intelligent enough to actually get that fucking money. Otherwise, you're just someone taking up space. And people are like, well, what about the people that aren't as intelligent? Learn a trade, learn a craft, learn something people need and make money off of it. But you set these people up for failure just so they'll be ready to be angry and ready to riot. And I'm supposed to vote for that. And only to make matters worse, you know, even if, let's look at Donald Trump and say, yeah, he is kind of a belligerent jackass. Although he is a good representation of America at times, if you ask me. But the reality of it is where is my, you know, built his own business, or she built her own business, individual on the left wing that's running as the candidate? I mean, they have a geriatric going in and out of fucking, basically sometimes Alzheimer's candidate of Joe Biden. I mean, why did Tulsi Gabbard get the fucking shaft? Why did Pete Buttigieg get the shaft on this? Oh yeah, and Bernie, the Bernie bros. You know Bernie was going to get shafted, and you know his extreme far left base was going to go fucking crazy. And then another thought. Why is it that if the left really cares about you, why is it they won't condemn the Antifa? Like, come out and just put the boot down. Why is it all these far-left mayors are saying, hey, look, we're for protesting, but if you start lighting crap on fire or doing this crap, that's when we're going to bring in the police. And you know why? Because they're more concerned with getting Trump to call in the National Guard, you know, having Trump do some crazy overseer shit, than they are with the fucking destruction of small businesses and communities. You know, like, it's funny how if you go back in time and you look at the Democrat Party traditionally, the Confederacy that held slaves, was fighting to hold slaves, became the Democrat Party. The same party that made the first anti-gun law to take guns out of the hands of black people. So that way the black people that were down there that recently were freed wouldn't dare vote against them. The same party that basically formed the KKK and used the KKK to intimidate the blacks. All over America, wherever blacks were, the KKK was there to intimidate them. Then, the same Democrat Party had made Jim Crow and segregation, and had to be drug kicking and screaming to the equality movement, like in the 1950s, because everybody says, oh, in the 60s they flipped the script. No, they fucking didn't. They had already ruled in the Supreme Court in the 50s that this was unconstitutional. So whether you liked it or not, this was going to change. The one mistake that I say Barry Goldwater made in the 60s was saying this should be left up to the states to make the decision. A constitutional argument that it's unpopular, segregation is unpopular to begin with. So the idea of saying that you can't do this or that, you're just going to be losing business, and the business that opens up its doors is going to get more business. So inevitably, the segregation argument was going to lose all over the country. But it's funny how the Democrats, who were dragged kicking and screaming when they were finally forced to face the argument, that's when they said, we're going to flip the script by creating more welfare. We're gonna end, say, segregation as we say we're ending it by basically creating, instead of redlining, we're going to make Section 8 housing. And we're going to take not the matter of the color of the person, but if you're poor and you're all poor, you're going to live in this section of town, in this shitty, underprivileged section of town. So the Democrats went from an argument of, basically keep them over there, segregate them over there, and to an argument of segregate them based on their income. And then we'll say we're helping them by kicking out the father out of these homes, be it white, black, or what the fuck ever. And basically turning it into a matriarchy where these kids were underprivileged. They needed balance of both a father and a mother. And so we saw the crime rates rise. You saw the crazy shit that happened in the 70s, the 80s, the crime of the 80s, and which kind of calmed down a bit by the 90s. But, it's amazing to see these people who say, we care about you, we love you, but we make you into a victim. So you'll sit there and always be hungry and pissed off. And what I see people like Dark Matters talking about the religious, fervor and, how the Republicans want to enslave you and, they want to do this and all this shit. It's, are you fucking high? You're talking about a religious trope that existed back in the late 80s and early 90s and was defeated by the late 90s, and then only had a reverberation because YouTube atheists battled against fucking YouTube, religious people, Christian, Islamic, whatever. And you know why? You know why? Because it made them money. Most of the people in the rest of the world that weren't, glued to YouTube, they didn't give a fuck. If they didn't like what was on their TV channel, they'd change to one of the other 30 to 100 channels. Like, oh, well, this is boring. Not going to watch this. It's that simple. The argument was defeated, already won, and still yet we see cats like Dark Matters. He's like, well, this is the image of conservatives. Like, the idea of the atheist conservative doesn't exist in his mind. The idea of the individualist saying, I would prefer, live and let live. You do your thing, I do my thing. Let's all just figure our own stuff out, and then if we want to work together, we can work together. But it's amazing. It's the old trope straw men. And it just shows me there's a lot of these people that have probably never really left where they're from. They've also, in reality, they haven't left the ideological bubble they've lived in. The world has moved on and changed. And they're like somebody whose paradigm says, back in my day, blah, blah, blah. It's like, and I see this with the amazing atheists as well. It's like, dude, okay, and this is the other thing. For all the prostrations of, greedy Republicans and all that shit, hey, man, why don't you take all your money, all your Subscribe Star, all your fucking Patreon, all your donations, and give them away to some charities. I'm sure there's a soup kitchen somewhere in a city that needs your help. But no, this is a business for you. And so this comes back down to the thing, for the greedy Republicans you're trying to slam, even though it's kind of a outdated trope considering the way the Democrats are running their party. They're basically the 90s Republicans at this point. Except for instead of religion, it's Marxism. You see all these people talking about these tropes from back in the day, and they're making money off of it. The drama they're going to cause between these different YouTubers is because a lot of these channels are stagnating. And if you're not growing, you're dying is the mentality. Ever since YouTube's recent algorithmic change, a lot of people are either extra shilling for the left because they're afraid they're going to get purged. They saw that with Stefan Molyneux. They said, Stefan Molyneux was a philosopher. You can like him or hate him, but he was a philosopher. And the thing of it is like, you kill the philosophers because you can't handle their argument. Well, what the fuck? You're a tyrant then. But so a guy like Dark Matters, he has to walk that line like, oh, I better make sure to say some crazy left-wing shit, lest the mob come for me. And make sure to, firm up my base. So I'm going to go talk shit about these people over here, hopefully to get them to say something stupid, so I can use it in my videos, while getting more left-wing Patreon supporters. And all these fucking chumps out there that are donating to my Patreon or Subscribe Star, they don't realize because of this drama I created, me being Dark Matters, I just made how many more thousands of dollars a year in subscribers. Plus, YouTube probably even maybe paid me for that. Now, if he's smart, no, I don't think they're paying him, because I've never seen an ad on a Dark Matters video. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. But the point of it is that this is a fucking business. And it's amazing how neocon, how many these leftists actually act like. The world's moved on, but you have to keep that rage alive. So at this point, back in the day, in the late 90s, you might have been the hero. And by the Obama era, maybe it was like, we've won the war. It's been what's been won really since the mid-2000s. Like, let's say 2005, the war was won then, the ideological war. But then once you've won it, then you're like, we have to purge any dissenting thought to make sure it never rises again. And that's where you've gone from the hero to being the tyrant. Anyways, that's a long rant. Well, you all have a good day. This is OTR Ogre. And hey, like, link, and subscribe. Take it easy.